Hi guys, I'm Shmee. Hello and welcome back to the channel where you join me today in Spain to take a fully detailed look at the brand new Mercedes CLS. Now this particular model is the range-topping AMG variant, the CLS 53. So we'll talk a lot more about what those 53 designations mean, sitting between the newly introduced 43s and the more traditional 63s at the very top of the line. So we'll take a walk around of the car, talk about the new design language from Mercedes, then we'll take it out for a test drive, see what it's like on the roads, and finally I want to show you what the luxurious interior of this car looks like, so make sure you stay tuned and we'll get to that. Let's get started though, taking a look at the new CLS. This is now the third generation of the Mercedes CLS, but let's get started by rewinding back to the initial introduction quickly. So if we go to 2003, Mercedes presented quite a niche product in the form of the Vision CLS concept. It was something that mixed the more traditional four-door saloon car with something a little bit sportier as well. Now the production version arrived the following year, and fast forward to 2011 and you have the second gen as well. Now although they might seem niche, between the two cars they sold 375,000 cars. That's clearly been quite a successful model for Mercedes, ergo the third generation we have here. Now this specific car, to give it its tongue twister of a name in full, is the Mercedes-AMG CLS 53 4MATIC Plus Coupe. So we get a number of bits of information out of that. The AMG, the fact that the power plant is built by AMG in Affalterbach, also the fact that it's the 53, the designation between the 43 and the 63s. We'll talk more about the engine when we get to look under the hood shortly. Also the 4MATIC Plus. Every model in the CLS lineup has four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive. Although it's predominantly rear biased, it will engage the front wheels when it detects slip or a loss of traction. But let's start just walking around this car for a moment and talking about the design. This car, being a press car, is obviously very highly equipped. It has a lot of nice specification on it, but just to point out some of the AMG features as we walk around the car, beside the obvious, the badging on the rear, you have this lip spoiler, a distinct AMG feature, obviously for aerodynamics, downforce, a little bit more downforce onto the rear axle when you're driving, say, at speeds on the German Autobahn. Down here at the rear though, a new look for the tailpipes. So AMGs often have quad tailpipes, twins on each side, but they've gone with the new oval design for the 53 designations rather than the more angular ones that you might expect to see on the 63s. So the 63 engines that we know and love, certainly me in particular, that you're familiar with seeing in the AMG GT, in the E63S, the S63 and the like, are a little bit different to this. Those are the 4-litre bi-turbo V8s. This car has a straight 6. So let us come round, just open up the engine bay. There we go, grab the lever and show you and talk a little bit more about this. So the challenge is always to find the lever. I believe it's there. Yeah, there we go. So this is the 3-litre straight 6 engine. It has a single turbocharger, although a kind of twin turbo setup. It's a single twin scroll turbo accompanied by a 48-volt hybrid system, so a very small additional hybrid system. The engine itself creates 435 horsepower and 500 newton meters of torque, but that is supported by Mercedes' EQ boost system, which will give it an additional 22 horsepower and 250 newton meters of torque. So that almost counts as the additional turbocharger with the way it manages airflow through the car and reuses the gases to power the engine. All a little bit complex for me. All I know is it means it's more efficient and you don't feel as much turbo lag as you might expect from a single turbo car, but we can talk more about that when we're driving it shortly. With the four-wheel drive system and also the 9-speed AMG speed shift automatic, you'll get 0 to 62 miles an hour or 100 kilometers an hour in just 4.5 seconds. Now that's quite impressive when you think that this car is as much as 2,000 kilos. It's just a smidge under 2 tons. Anyway, let me close this down one moment. Just take a look at the completed car from the outside. So the CLS is based on the E-Class. It's just a touch under 5 meters long, 4 meters 98 long, but it features lots of the technology that you see in the S-Class. So the naming structure, CLS, CL was their coupe line, S is the ultimate in luxury. So we'll talk a lot about the interior in a second, but just to take it in, I personally think the design looks very nice, but it has triggered an awful lot of discussion. People who like it, people who don't. It will be interesting to see how it develops. Let me just step inside though and show you a little bit around here. Now we've got the afternoon sun, so please do excuse me for that, but we're familiar with lots of the gadgetry that we have in store, the large twin digital displays. I'll just quickly show you the key for the car before we take a step in. Nice metal piece. So, jumping in here, you can see already we've got lots of buttons for different pieces of technology, for the distance sensor, for the self-steering. Let me just close the door. We've got carbon fibre trim as well, which is lovely. And press the button here to start it up. So it is a very soft and odd start sound. It has to be said, that takes some getting used to, because it doesn't fire, it doesn't kick into life, it almost gently turns on. And obviously that's the 48-volt system that will change the way it drives as well in terms of regeneration of power, but it gives it a very strange feeling you have to get used to a little bit. Now, just to take a quick glimpse around, and we'll talk a lot more about this as well, the air vents are very, very cool. These, if you turn them up and adjust the temperature, I don't know if you can quite see in the daylight, but they go red or blue. They're illuminated. There are colour strips everywhere, above the screens, around the trim, around the canopy, around the cabin, sorry. It's a very, very nice place to be sat. You've got this super luxurious steering wheel with all the controls. You can change endless things on the displays. If I just use this touchpad to go through things, he says, yes, there we go, you need to be out of what modes you're in. We'll talk more about all of that later on. So there's a lot to see and show in here. There is no question about that, but I think we should head out onto the roads and discover what this 53 engine is like to drive. Now, this is one of those days that when you're in the sunshine, it's boiling hot. When you're in the shade, it is freezing cold. But nonetheless, I'm a little bit warm, so let's turn these lights blue again and make it a little bit colder inside here. So in traditional Mercedes fashion, you have the control for your drive, reverse, park, etc. on the stalk on the right. Your lights and wipers are both on the left. If it's an AMG GT, the stalk is down here to control which gears you're in, so it all gets a little bit confusing, but it does work very nicely when you know what you're doing with that. So let us get on the move, and obviously I'm going to drive, but first in comfort. This car, being so well equipped, has variable settings, dynamic controls for just about everything you can think of. But as you get moving, it's very gentle. You can hear some slightly strange noises from it, although maybe that's just because I'm not used to driving a Mercedes with a straight six. Just take a look out. Right, we're clear on the road, which is always nice. But when you brake, you get feelings. Obviously it has stop-start, and it has an engine that when you do come to a stop, it actually almost seamlessly just turns off. You don't really notice it. There's no abrupt then start up either when you're doing that. So I'm not a frequent driver of large saloon or this style of car, so I need to get a little bit accustomed with what I'm driving, although obviously I've had a lot of fun with the E63S, so that's, I suppose, my benchmark. And I've also driven the E43, the SLC 43, so this is the 53 engine. It's going to have, I expect, some of that AMG spice, some of that character, the noise, the excitement of it. And just going around corners, I noticed the side bolster in the seat strengthens just to hold you in your position a little bit more comfortably, which is a very strange feeling as it gets a little bit tougher on your sides as you go around corners. So in comfort mode, obviously we're in the softest suspension setup. You can feel it's quite wallowy and going all over the place, but really if you're on a road like this, you would be in one of the more dynamic settings. So just to accelerate a little bit, there's more than enough power and torque, and you feel it just glide and ooze away, and that's, I think, what you would expect this car to be doing. It's comfortable in terms of the seats. They're a new seat design for Mercedes having these in this car. They aren't too firm, and they're pretty decent. I sometimes have problems with Mercedes seats, so I like these a lot. If we use this dynamic toggle though, just go one up into sport mode, the gearbox has obviously blipped itself down. You can reconfigure the dashboard displays as well, which is very cool. You get a bit more sound, quicker kick down, and away you go. So you do get some noise, although I think it might be speaker piped into the cabin. It felt a little bit that way, but you get more noise in sport than you do in comfort. And I'm sure if we go one more up into Sport Plus, it drops the gears again. We can go manual with the paddles. You can hold it manual with that. Oh, there were some nice crackles. Let's just slow down a moment. You get some burbles off the exhaust when you do that, and then put the foot down. Yeah, it's quick. Oh, in Sport Plus it doesn't auto upshift, so I went straight into the red line, but always nice to see what it does in that instance. Just drop it back down again. It's quick, you know. For a car of this size and scale, it gets moving very, very nicely. So let's attack some more corners and see what it feels like, because I don't actually feel like it's as big as it is, and I like these kind of cars. It has, you know, decent practicality. We'll have a look in the boot later on, but without being an SUV. I think there's this massive market move towards SUVs, and I like cars that look a little bit sportier and drive, you know, how this does. Riding over a bump, even in the firmer suspension, is not too antisocial. We don't have a race mode in here. In the 63s, you have the race as the top configuration of the dynamic control. In here, you've just got Eco, I think, the other way. Yeah, we can go all the way to Eco. Not that I would frequently drive an Eco. And you have this lovely steering wheel with these controls to go through the different things. This was introduced for the newest S-Class. So what can we establish driving gently in this car? Well, it's very quiet. The air conditioning is one of the main things. It's not the quietest, to be honest. Definitely driven quieter cars. Oh, this is a little bit tight. This is where you get nervous in such a big car, especially when you're driving a foreign left-hand drive car. Gentle, soft, premium indicator sound, which is always a nice thing to have. Let's drive along. There's a little bit of noise. Again, the seat bolster just keeping me secure and snug. We've got the Burmester sound system, which is just incredible. But you look around and you feel very much like you're kind of enclosed in your driver's area. I love the dual displays that Mercedes do. So much information and configuration that you can have and data you can show, and we'll run through a little bit more about that, but it's wonderful what you have access to. I'm going to go back actually and find that road again, because that was really fun. Then generally, when we talk about technology, this car has a lot. So you have the park, you have the Distronic, so obviously the adaptive cruise control system, whereby it will adjust your speed based on the car in front of you. We also have a new thing that's been introduced here, where it will detect and read the cameras on the road, and it will adjust the adaptive cruise control based on the speed limit sign. So in theory, when it sees the sign, it would change the speed you're driving, which is quite nice, and it goes straight back to whatever that speed limit is. So if you're on a motorway that's jumping between 100 kilometers an hour and 120, it will get it right from overhead gantries, from signs at the side of the road. So that's a pretty neat bit of technology. Obviously it will have the steering wheel, so it can keep you in the lane, lane guidance. It will vibrate if you cross the lines, or if you have it on adaptive cruise, it will keep you dead pinned around corners in your lane. You're not going to go anywhere. And something really nice about Mercedes is that when you're doing that, if you just indicate, it will move lanes automatically. So you'd be driving, you just indicate, and the car shuffles across a lane, which I love. Anyway, we're going to head out of here, so let us put it up into Sport Plus. Eco actually wasn't too unfriendly. Often Eco modes can, I guess, invalidate the throttle completely, but here we go in Sport. I like that shift noise. Even just gently, you get a nice snap to it. Right, so are we going to get an overtaking opportunity? Because nobody wants to drive up a nice twisty road that's open speed limits behind another car. Yes, off we go. So I think that's kind of proved the point from the performance stakes. There's more than enough power to just pull up and away you head. I've got a lovely head-up display as well on the right in front of me. Nice amounts of information. Those burbles, they're good. So it revs up to nearly 7,000 RPM. We're in the stiffest suspension mode setting. Decided to just let you hear it there for a moment and get some of the exhaust noise or sound or what I'm hearing while I'm driving inside this car. So, oh, definitely wide when another one goes the other way beside you. It felt like a really wide car there on the road. So you've got all of this technology, like I said, from the S-Class. You've got a million different gears you can click up through. 9th gear, there we go. You've got a car that's sized like the E-Class. I mean, that's where it's positioned, priced between the two. I think it's a pretty winning combination. It makes sense to use some of that AMG DNA. I mean, it's the way, from a marketing perspective, if I was to be a little bit cynical, obviously, by putting an AMG badge on the back, it makes it easier to sell a product because it sounds more exciting from the start. They are three very special letters, and they're three letters that are behind an awful lot of special driving things at the moment. The Formula One team that's obviously doing incredibly well in recent years. Products like the AMG GTR, the race version, the AMG GT3 and GT4 cars that win pretty much everything they attempt to win. Oh, that was a nice sound, as well as the exhaust warms up. So I think that's the cynic in me. The reality is, though, if you let those guys who know what they're doing to make a car quite exciting have a go at it, they're going to make it quite exciting, which is an absolute winning combination. So I'm all in favour for that. I think this works very well as a result. Having an engine sound that, just doing that, yeah, there's that sound that you think is going to come from maybe a BMW, you know, it's a straight six, but in a Mercedes is slightly unusual, but not to say it's a bad thing. As they come towards me, the headlights are very cool, the way they aggressively point in towards the front grille. Good things to say about driving it. It's more kind of information, I suppose, this, just showing you around brakes firm. Yeah, obviously all cars brake very firmly. It's something that is easy to get carried away with, but even a small hatchback will brake almost as quickly as a supercar sometimes, so you expect it, although a car can have that rolling mass side of things where it will just feel like it's barraging on. Anyway, we're back in a little bit of town, so let us pop it back into comfort mode for now. You can have individual and completely customize all of this. I will play around with a little bit more of the digital side of things, the tech side of things, and show you around the inside. Back at base, I'm parked facing a very nice lineup of CLSs, but I want to show you more around what we have in here, because honestly, it is remarkable how much technology we have access to, and just the features and comfort. I mean, basic things, the boot opening toggle is down there for the power fold. We'll have a look back there. You've got all of your seat controls on the door, your memory seats, heated seats, your ability to control the passenger seat, which is always fun, but just from here, you can move your passenger seat forwards or backwards if you want to make it more comfortable for somebody perhaps that you're chauffeuring in the rear of the car. Turn it back onto the driver's side. I think all of this, perhaps it's a bit extravagant in terms of styling, but I've grown to it over the previous models that we've seen, and I really like how Mercedes do all of this. In here you've got access to a lot of your controls for assistance systems, lowering the suspension, raising the air suspension, head-up display stuff, your lane guidance, your steering control, active steering control. Then you get round to the steering wheel. So this is the AMG Performance steering wheel, which has access to so much. So you have these little touch paddles that, as you can see, as you move and go through different menus, let you do different things. If we go back to home, you can see how up on this screen you can have all of your AMG information, head-up display. You can change the design of the display. So if we go to, let's say, progressive, something completely different, back up to classic, you can set that however you would like. You can have everything on there, honestly. It's a brilliant, brilliant system. But even, what should we go back to actually? Let's bring the nav on. Always a good thing to look at. Anyway, even here, the adaptive cruise control, the way you set this and interact with it, will go up in steps of 5 kilometers an hour or so as you press resume, cancel your distance to the vehicle in front or behind. They're just very nice to touch and feel. And then over on this side, you have the control for the central display. So if you press home, for example, it will bring back up that main display, which you can also control through the toggles around the center console. So in here, everything again you expect to see and have access to. You can have hotkey access to the different driving routes that are configured for this tour. That's quite nice as well. In-car office, there's a hotspot. We've got vehicle information. If you go in here, you go to track pace. Oh, it has various tracks saved and stored if you want to drive it on a racetrack. So that's also very nice. Warning for use on tracks only. So I'm not going to be using this right now on the road, but we have you can see, it's got drag race, so you could do your 0 to 62 times and the car will tell you what it's up to. That's always quite nice, isn't it? Anyway, we've got lots of access to different things in there. If we quit back out and go back to home, also in vehicle, you have lots of your configurations. So let's talk a little bit about this. So seats, obviously, tons of controls. Dynamic, massaging, lumbar, all sorts of side bolster things that I've talked about earlier. The climate control is very interesting, as is energizing comfort control. So this is the Mercedes feature where you can set your mood and it will change all sorts of things like the seat massager, the air conditioning, which is mixed in with the fragrance dispenser, which is always ridiculous. How would you like your car to smell today, sir? Well, there you have the option. So you can change that in here in energizing comfort control, and just general things about the drive. Dynamic select, you can go through the individual configuration but also bring up some very interesting display screens which are very nice to see while you're driving. So just to select this for a moment, it takes a moment to load, but when you've got it up, you've got G sensor and your kilowatt usage, Newton meters, your boost, all that kind of thing. Is I always think this is really cool to see and be able to have this kind of information in this car. So if I just give it a blip, you'll see that the torque chart raises up there. Anyway, what else do we have back in here? Assistance. Assistance is all of our dynamic assistance systems: traffic sign assist, camera and park assist, active brake assist, speed adjustment. So speed adjustment is when it will see the sign. Reduces speed ahead of bends and other yes, I did experience that earlier. So thinking about this a little bit, active lane keep. One thing I want to talk about is the steering wheel. So when I was driving on the motorway and you want to be quite relaxed with the adaptive cruise control, you do often end up feeling like you're having to tug at it and force it, so then you want to disable the system. That it did really get on my nerves, as you can tell a little bit when I was driving. Each their own. I'm sure some people like it, but to me it's just a little bit irritating. Anyway, we've pretty much been through everything that is available in there. Just have a quick scroll down. No, that's the bottom of the display. So continuing down, obviously you have those very nicely styled air vents, your air conditioning controls, clock surrounded by some hotkeys to jump between modes if that's easier. Storage bucket in here with a pad for charging your phone, USB port, some cup holders, nice flap to hide it away under. Then you have all your driving controls, so to speak, so you can bring up the reversing camera quickly from there. Oh, we've got more settings in here, more to play with and learn and look at, and top-down cameras and side cameras and 360 and everything, absolutely everything, and your volume control. But on the left side you have your different suspension settings as you adjust that, manual for the gearbox, traction into different settings, and your dynamic control as well. And on here you can kind of write inputs for what you want on the system. In the center console you've got a big storage bucket with some more USB ports, good storage in there. But I think, is that more or less everything, other than maybe coming up here, big rear view mirror, almost borderless display. We've got a sunroof as well, which is always quite nice to have. Up top, is that actually open at the moment maybe? Which way does it go? There we go. Where is it, backwards? Yeah, interesting. Because of the shape of the car, it kind of looks like it sits up a little bit. Anyway, that does what it's supposed to do. So let me just turn this off, because we should have a look also in the back and in the boot. So let's climb out. I didn't necessarily show the windows and mirror controls, but the back of the car, so that seat is obviously in my driving position. Let's take a step in here, have a little look. Oh, I did actually just catch my head as I stepped in, so there's decent knee room. There's a lot more room in the back here than previous models, because it now has the bench seat across rather than the single seats, but the roof is quite low. So I'm just under 1.80 m, 5'11" or so, just under that, and I've got not much room above me, just a tiny bit, but it's this side bit. It doesn't impact your normal use, but getting in and out you have to kind of duck your head down to get out of there. But that's the small price to pay for having a car that looks slightly more exciting, to have that sporty styling. So what else do we have? We've got the armrest that opens down. I suppose this is all fairly traditional, but always nice to see. Anyway, just have a little look around. We've got the same styling of the air vents here in the middle with the controls. So generally it's pretty decent, you know, you wouldn't be unhappy being back here for a long journey. Plus you've got that view to look at through the cabin, which is just very, very, very nice. I'll take a step back out. Got to come around to the luggage space, have a quick glance in the boot, how much room we've got back here. You can flip out the Mercedes logo and it will power fold open up, and there's actually vast amounts of space. The boot extends a very long way in. You're not going to have any issues lugging around an awful lot of stuff back there, and you've got these levers to pull down the seats in the rear as well, which just makes things a little bit easier and even more practical. So I have to say, definitely quite a nice car. Does it make sense over an E-Class? That's, I suppose, down to individual opinion. You can see some different cars here, different configurations. I shot with the 400 diesel variant of the car before. Well, that's one thing just to notice. Turbo 4MATIC, so having turbo on the side to emphasize the way this car is powered. So there we have it, the Mercedes-AMG CLS 53. The start of big things for Mercedes. It will be interesting to see what happens going forwards with the 43s, the 53s, the 63s, and what options are offered on different models and different variants inside the different lineups. It all gets a little bit crazy with different body styles, shapes, platforms. For example, this being the 4-door coupe, you can have the E-Class T-model estate station wagon, you can have the saloon, you can have an E-Class 2-door coupe, convertible. The list just goes on and on and on, and it's very hard to decide. That's probably the only problem. They're basically all exceptionally good, it has to be said. So there we go. I hope that's been quite an informative look at this car. Run through an awful lot of the details, show you around it, talk a lot about it, but I'm going to leave this one for there. So thank you very much as always for watching. I appreciate your support. That's it for this time, and I'll catch up with you again very soon. Cheers.